Hey guys, as promised, we are going to start our newest read aloud today. It is a book called Among the Hidden. Now, if you were in one of my lit circles this year, you should be pretty familiar with it. I think y'all started it, but you didn't get any further than about chapter 5. And so I'm just going to read it for everybody now. I think you all will really like it. I feel like it goes perfectly with our current situation being in quarantine and all. It is a book about a little boy named Luke. He is about you all's age. And it is set in a time where couples can only have two children. Well, Luke is the family's third child. Therefore, he's what they call a shadow child, and he must stay hidden at all times. And throughout the book, we'll see a series of things that happen that cause Luke to become dissatisfied with being the third child, being hidden all the time, and it's his process of becoming unhidden in a sort of way. So we're going to go ahead and start it. I'm going to start chapter 1. I hope that you answered the pre-reading question. And here we go. Chapter 1. He saw the first tree shudder and fall far off in the distance. Then he heard his mother call out in the kitchen window, "Luke, inside, now!" He had never disobeyed the order to hide. Even as a toddler, barely able to walk in the backyard's tall grass, he had somehow understood the fear in his mother's voice. But on this day, the day they began taking the woods away, he hesitated. He took one extra breath of fresh air, scented with clover and honeysuckle, and, coming from far away, pine smoke. He laid his hoe down gently and savored one last moment of feeling warm soil beneath his bare feet. He reminded himself, "I will never be allowed outside again. Maybe never again as long as I live." He turned and walked into the house as silently as a shadow. What if somebody told us we could never go outside again? Hmm. "Why?" he asked at the supper table that night. It wasn't a common question in the Garner house. There were plenty of hows. How much rain the backfield get? How's the planting going? Even what's? What did Matthew do with 5/16 wrench? What's Dad going to do about that busted tire? But why wasn't considered much worth asking. Luke asked again, "Why'd you have to sell the woods?" Luke's dad and paused in the midst of shoveling forkfuls of boiled potatoes into his mouth. "Told you before, we didn't have a choice. Government wanted it. You can't tell the government no." Mother came over and squeezed Luke's shoulder in reassuring squeeze before turning back to the stove. They had defied the government once with Luke. That had taken all the defiance they had in them, maybe more. "We wouldn't have sold the woods if we hadn't had to," she said, ladling out thick tomatoey soup. "The government didn't ask us if we wanted houses there." She pursed her lips as she slid the bowls of soup onto the table. "But the government's not going to live in the houses," Luke protested. At 12, he knew better, but sometimes still pictured the government as a big, mean, fat person, 2 or 3 times as tall as an ordinary man, who went around yelling at people, "Not allowed," and "Stop that." It was because of the way his parents and older brothers talked. "Government won't let us plant corn there." "Government's keeping the prices down." "Government's not going to like this crop." "Probably some of the people who live in those houses will be government workers," Mother said. "It'll all be city people." If he'd been allowed, Luke would have gone over to the kitchen window and peered out at the woods, trying for the umpteenth time to picture rows and rows of houses where the firs and maples and oaks now stood, or had stood. Luke knew from a sneak peek before supper that half the trees were now toppled. Some already lay on the ground, some hung at weird angles from their former lofty positions in the sky. Their absence made everything look different, like a fresh haircut exposing a band of untanned skin on the forehead. Even from deep inside the kitchen, Lou could tell the trees were missing because everything was brighter, more open, scarier. "And then when those people move in, I have to stay away from the windows?" Luke asked, though he knew the answer. The question made Dad explode. He slammed his hand down on the table. "Then you got to stay away now. Everybody and his brother's going to be trampling around back there to see what's going on. They see you." He waved his fork violently. Luke wasn't sure what the gesture meant, but he knew it wasn't good. No one had ever told him exactly what would happen if anyone saw him. Death? Death was what happened to the runt pigs who got stepped on by their stronger brothers and sisters. Death was a fly that stopped buzzing when the swatter hit it. He had a hard time thinking about himself in connection with a smashed fly or a dead pig gone stiff in the sun. It made his stomach feel funny even trying. I don't think it's fair we got to do Luke's chores now, Luke's elder brother said. Grump, Luke's older brother, Mark, grumbled. Can he go outside some? Maybe at night? Luke waited hopefully for the answer, but Dad just said no without looking up. It's not fair, Mark said again. Mark was the second son, the lucky son, Luke thought when he was feeling sorry for himself. Mark was 2 years older than Luke and barely a year younger than Matthew, the oldest. Matthew and Mark were easily recognizable as brothers, with their dark hair and chiseled faces. Luke was fairer, smaller boned, softer looking. He often wondered if he ever looked tougher like them. Somehow he didn't think so. Luke don't do nothing nohow, Matthew jeered. We won't miss his work at all. It's not my fault, Luke protested. I'd help more if... Mother laid her hands on his shoulders again. Hush, all of you, she said. Luke will do what he can. He always has. The sound of tires on their gravel driveway came through the open window. Now who? Dad started. Luke knew the rest of the sentence. Who could that be? Why were they bothering him now? His first chance all day to sit down. It was a question Luke always heard the end of from the other side of the door. Today, skittish because of the woods coming down, he scrambled up faster than usual, dashing for the door to the back stairs. He knew without watching that his mother would take his plate from the table and hide it in a cupboard, would slide his chair back into the corner so it looked like an unneeded square. In 3 seconds, she would hide all evidence that Luke existed, just in time to step to the door and offer a weary smile to the fertilizer salesman or the government inspector or whomever else had come to interrupt their supper. Okay, so jumping into today's lesson, as you know, we started out reviewing Unit 9, and then we went back and reviewed Unit 5. And throughout the course of the year, we only got to learn 4 different syllable types. The first one we've reviewed so far are those R-control syllable types. If you remember, R-control syllable type means that you have a vowel in your syllable or your push of breath that is immediately backed up with an R or closed in with an R, and that R is controlling it. So, in terms of R control syllables, if we think about words like yarn, I need more yarn for my blanket. If you see here, we identify our vowel first, yarn, and then it is backed up with an R. Hear how that R is controlling that A sound. And then if I wanted to go ahead and identify my syllable types, I know that the first thing I do is identify the amount of syllables. One here, so I give it one scoop. My vowel is not A. I look at what's immediately behind my vowel. This R, it is controlling it, so this is an R controlled syllable. And then I just circle the pair. Another example would be like dorm. She had to decorate her dorm when she went to college. One syllable. The O is my vowel. It's immediately backed up with an R. This is an R controlled syllable. So, R controlled syllables are when we have a vowel in one push of breath that is immediately backed up with an R. Also, last week when I was talking about syllable division and multisyllabic words, I only covered words that had closed syllables. And we know that closed syllables are those syllables where we have a vowel that is closed in with one or more consonants. So, if I had the word napkin, use a napkin to wipe your face. Say I wanted to identify the syllable types of those syllables. I check for my pushes of breath first, napkin. And then I know that my syllable division rule states that anytime I have 2 different consonants in between 2 vowels, I split between those 2 consonants. So napkin, and then I just work syllable by syllable to identify the type. In nap, the A is my vowel. It's closed in with a P, keyword closed, and it's making the eh sound. So this is a short vowel. It is also a closed syllable. Same thing with kin. In kin, the I is my vowel, closed in with an N. I is making the I sound, short I. And this is also closed in. And then I'll do another one. Let's do the word submit. Make sure that you are submitting all of your work. I put a suffix on there. But base word is submit. Same thing. How many pushes of breath or how many syllables? submit. And notice how I split in between those two consonants, the B and the M, in between my two vowels, the U and the I. And then I work syllable by syllable to identify the type. And sub, U is my vowel, it's closed in with the B. Short U, this is closed. And then in mit, the I is my vowel, it's closed in with the T. Short I, closed. So those are R controlled syllables, those syllables where we have our vowel that is immediately backed up with an R, and this R is controlling the vowel sound. Yarn and dorm, R, or. And then we have those closed syllables. Anytime a vowel is closed in with one or more consonants, it is closed and the vowel is making a short sound. Napkin, submit. Okay, so today I'm going to talk about one of the other two syllable types we haven't reviewed yet, and that's the VCE syllable type or the vowel consonant E syllable type. And in this pattern, it's when we have our vowel that's followed with a consonant and then ends with a silent E. So think about a word like cake. C-A-K-E. We have cake. If I look and I go to identify my vowels in cake, I see that I have an A and an E. However, this E is silent, and then this A is making the long sound, A. Remember those long vowel sounds, they go on and on and on. They never end. So, in this case, cake would be an example of a vowel consonant E syllable. So if I go to identify the type, I would scoop it because it's one push of breath, cake. I had a delicious cake on my birthday. And then I identify my vowels, which are the A and the E. And then I think if this E isn't making a sound, it's silent. And then this A is long. This must be a vowel consonant E syllable type. And you know, we always mark it with V-E. Another example would be the word hope. Hope. I hope we get to leave the house soon. Let's think about hope. If I'm going to identify the syllable type, I look and see that it has one push of breath, a silent E, the word isn't hopey, and then this O is long. So this is also a V-E syllable, vowel consonant E. That looks like a G. It's not easy writing like this. Okay. And the reason for this silent E, remember, this is our magic E. It's our helper. If this E wasn't here, the word would be hop. I hop we can go back outside soon. No. We talk about hop when we're talking about bunnies, but hope, it needs that magic E to make this O long. Same thing with cake. It would be cack because that A would be a closed syllable without that magic E, vowel consonant E. And we don't go around saying I had a delicious cack. No, we say cake. Vowel consonant E syllables can also be found in compound words. And we know that when we have a compound word like fireman, and we go to divide the syllables, you simply scoop between the words. So fireman. And then if I'm going to identify those syllables, I just work it syllable by syllable, like I do any multisyllabic word. And then I look at fire. If you listen to fire, this I is long, but this E isn't necessarily making a sound. That is an example of vowel consonant E syllable type. And then man, I look for my vowels. The A is closed in with the N. That short A sound, so closed. So that is an example of vowel consonant E and closed syllable being combined. And it really doesn't matter the order they come in because you could also have a word like mistake. It's okay to make a mistake when you're reading out loud like I did earlier. Mistake. I look for my vowels. I have an I, an A, and an E, so I work from top to bottom. From I and A, I have an ST blend in between two different consonants, so I split in between those. And boys and girls, very important. Anytime you have a word like this, a vowel, consonant, and an E, it always sticks together. So that take stays together. You don't do something like that. No, you put the E with the other syllable. So if I want to identify the type, I look for my vowel. The I is closed in with an S. It's making an S sound. Miss, short, closed, and then I look at take. My A and my E are my vowels. I have an A closing with a K, a consonant, and then a silent E. So this is a VCE syllable. And then, boys and girls, last thing to remember about the VCE syllable is that it also has an exception or a rule breaker. So if we look at words like give, what do we see here? Well, naturally, with our new knowledge of VCE syllables, we would say, oh, we have an I, which is a vowel, a consonant V, and then a silent E. So, oh, this is probably a VCE syllable. But wait, when you go to mark that I, you notice that I is making the short I sound. The word isn't give, it's give. So remember, the never wants to be at the end of a word. It can't stand being last. So we put that E there just to satisfy it. So this is still a short vowel. And when we mark this, this is a VCE exception. So then we write V-E and then just mark it out. Same thing with the word live. And with live, it's going to be very important to think about the context of your sentence because this can be pronounced live sometimes. Um, the show is being recorded in front of a live studio audience, but in this case, if you had a sentence like, I'm going to live in California by the end of the year, it's live. This is making the short I sound. And of course, we have that E, but remember, this E is just here to satisfy this V. So this is a VCE exception, and then we mark it out. Same thing with the word captive. The pirates took the ship crew captive. Now I'm working with a multisyllabic word, so I find my vowels first. I have an A, an I, and an E. And so, working from top to bottom, A and I are my first two vowels I come across. I have a P and a T, two different consonants, so I split in between those. And same thing that I talked about with mistake, when you are identifying it in the syllable, that silent E still needs to go with the second syllable. So I go to identify my syllable types. In captive, A is the vowel, it's closed in with a P, closed, short A. This is a closed syllable type. And then I look at tiv. I and E are my vowels. However, the E is silent. I'm not saying captivity. And then this I is making the short sound. This is a VCE exception. So those are VCE syllable types and the exception. Tomorrow we will hit up open syllables, and then later on this week we'll work on combining all four. See you tomorrow.